Do you have a clear picture of where your business is heading? This is a big question. It oftentimes comes up in the very early stages of meeting with a brand new prospect, an advisory firm who's looking for help, wanting to grow. And oftentimes, even in very large advisory firms managing several billions in assets, owners and executives can really feel challenged to be able to describe the direction of the business. That is the strategy for future growth. And oftentimes, what tends to happen is that the initial response is one around financial targets. Here's what we're trying to accomplish in terms of revenue growth or asset growth, client growth. They might talk a little bit about mergers and acquisitions. And whilst that's really important, financials are incredibly important to set when you're thinking about strategy and what the next few years looks like. It doesn't actually provide much insight, if any, on exactly the direction that we're heading in order to create scale. So when it comes to strategy, I always counsel our clients. We do a lot of work in strategic growth planning with advisory firm owners and executives. And we always encourage firms to firstly take a 3-year view. You can use less time if you prefer. You can use a little longer if you prefer, but that tends to be a great time frame for being able to drive a significant amount of change, but also not too far in the distance where you might feel like we kind of have, there's too much uncertainty, right? And imagine, put on your rose-colored glasses and imagine what you want this business to look like in 3 years. What is the to-be state, ideally, that you want to get to? And then we can work backwards from there and figure out, well, how are we going to get there? This is not about reinforcing the status quo, and that's where many firms are challenged when they start to try to build a strategy, is that really just reinforcing what we're trying to do now, and maybe we're trying to do that a little bit better going forward. Not very aspirational for the most part. So we want to really try to imagine ideally the business we want to have in the future. In addition, we want to really avoid falling into the trap of confusing tactics for strategy. Tactics are just the short-term, day-to-day activities that have to get done in order to help us move in a certain direction, but they are not necessarily taking into account the longer-term view and some of the bigger ticket items that we have to work on and work towards in order to guide the firm in the right direction for the future. So try not to get caught up in the minutiae of the day-to-day in getting stuff done, lots of small little activities that will not help you strategically, if you like. So be very mindful. The other thing to pay close attention to when you're thinking about strategy is to have the right people at the table. You want to have the right executives or even some really talented team members that you think could contribute really well to strategy, can think creatively, can think aspirationally about the future of the firm, and have them involved, because ultimately, for you to be successful, you have to take that strategy and be able to implement it. And if your team understands it at a level where they can take some ownership around implementation, then that'll be incredibly helpful to you. So by all means, make sure you got the right mix of people at the table as you're working to build out your strategy. We do a lot of work in this space with advisory firm owners and executives. So if you do need support in your business strategy, feel free to reach out to us. You can also subscribe to Departo Insights. It's our business intelligence monthly. It will land in your inbox on the last Friday of every month, and you can be amongst the first to get access to some of the big issues that we're seeing in our consulting work amongst advisory firms and how we go about addressing some of those big challenges. All right, my friends, I hope that's been helpful to you. I wish you all the very best on your business growth journey.